Welcome, everybody, to this week's Distressed Property Call. This podcast and broadcast is brought to you by Home Loan Advocates. That's right, my partner David Bartels at Home Loan Advocate. They specialized in distressed property solutions for buyers, sellers, investors, and realtors across the country. Doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter the situation you're in. If you're working on a distressed property and you need some assistance, call 805-413-8000. Again, that number is 805-413-8000. Ask for David Bartels or visit homeloanadvocates.com. Or if you'd like, send David an email at david@homeloanadvocates.com. This episode is also brought to you by Monster Marketing. That's right. That's the reason this call started and why we do it each and every week. Monster Marketing. It is a direct marketing method that I created to get face-to-face with people that have missed payments. It's literally 3% of the market, some more in other areas, but Monster Marketing guarantees face-to-face results with these people. We will give you proven step-by-step coaching, training, and mentoring so that you can convert those individuals into listings or deals, depending on being a realtor or investor. If you would like to find out more, go visit Honish.com. That's HONISH.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to your weekly coaching call. My name is Lee Honish. I am a professional marketer. Feel free to go to Honish.com, fill out the form. Or feel free to text me at 858-663-2537. Don't care what your business is. Don't care what your business model is. I can help you get more of exactly what you want. Just go to Honish.com and fill out the form. I am joined, as always, by the number one top producing agent in the Conejo Valley. If you don't know what that is, that means Ventura in Spanish. Not really. But it sounded good. He is also literally the leading loss mitigator on the face of the planet. So if you're working with people in distress, who have short sales, who don't know what to do based on COVID, he also has a company called Home Loan Advocates. David, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing dandy. How about you?
We'll talk when I'm not recording.
All right.
Okay. You can already tell I'm falling apart at the seams. With that said, David, tell everybody about Home Loan Advocates.
Well, we're a national organization of like-minded real estate investors and real estate agents who are focused on making sure that people facing foreclosure understand their alternatives to foreclosure and helping them identify workout solutions that range from foreclosure postponement to loan modifications to selling their house and getting transitioned into a new one. And if you need help with a short sale or any of those things, number is 805-413-8000 or david@homeloanadvocates.com.
Also being voted on by a group of his peers as one of the most innovative brokers in all of the United States, you have created a new model. Please tell us more.
Well,
I'm showing up my marketing skills at the same time.
what we're doing is, we're making an evolution into a new venture called Everhome that has a technology. It's a technology assisted information-based sales process really targeted towards for sale by owners or people who would like something in between for sale by owner and full service listing. So we've created a new segment of the market called For Sale with Seller, and we are actually out beginning to promote that. We're doing it currently under the Help You Sell banner, but are evolving to Everhome. We're just waiting for licensing and other legal requirements to get in place before we can officially launch as Everhome. But in the meantime, we are doing that and interviewing agents all around the state of California for salary plus commission opportunities to help us share our message with the community at large.
You know, David, I was thinking about this week. Why did you call the company Everhome? I have a theory. I want to see if I'm right.
Well, I didn't actually. It was a team. I've been I'm used to working as a broker owner, and to do this venture, which involves taking the company public and doing a national expansion. We should be public within 6 months. Um, I hired a CEO, a CTO, a CFO. We have a chief of staff now, in addition to my operational team and sales team that we had already created. And it was through the marketing concept that somebody came up with that name, and it kind of stuck for a lot of reasons. We like to
Yes, I'm
we
on the
like to
lot of
play on
reasons
words.
top. Yes,
Yeah,
I was on the lot of reasons.
yeah.
Okay, so covered it. With that said, we hope you all in real estate are doing very well. It doesn't matter if you're doing escrow. It doesn't matter if you're doing loans. We have a wide array of people who listen to this broadcast. We have a very large coaching group that still shows up constantly. They are part of something called Monster Marketing and Advocate Marketing. All you really have to do is go to Honish.com, fill out the form, find out how you can help people who've missed payments. And guess what? People are missing payments, David. Businesses. I'm trying to grit my teeth on the topic because I really don't think anybody thought businesses would be going out of business, well, literally without playing a pun, wholesale. I can say this safely here. And I, you know, I wake up every day to a news alert. I read the news, and we'll cover everything that's going on. Companies boarding up because being afraid of protesting. And we have no political alignment on this. Every life matters. I've made this clear. We made it clear last week. I've made it clear on every podcast I do. Everybody should be treated fairly. We've run an advocate program to help people in every level of distress. Now, I've personally done it for 14 years. David and I have been together for a decade, professing being an advocate. I think it's technically 11, technically. But the reason I bring that all up is it's calamity upon calamity upon calamity. CNBC's already starting the recession to depression. People don't want to go back to work because they're making more by being unemployed. We're in a very precarious state, but it does not seem to be affecting, so far, at least on a national level. Yes, there are pockets, and I will identify them if anybody wants to know. But so far, real estate is still maintaining. So let's start right there. With everything going on, and nothing's going to change. Okay, today's news is we are respiking on coronavirus. We have people, and rightfully so, they should do this, protesting and wanting change. That is part of freedom of speech, which is why David and I can say whatever the hell we want, and that's kind of a fact. Things are very precarious. I mean, really, I thought it was weird during COVID, but now you're sprinkling in, I don't like the word civil unrest. I think they want civil change. I really believe that. So now we have these two combining elements of people that are, one's overriding the other, but real estate is still plus or minus 5 or 10, 0.05, depending on your market. It's gone up, it's gone slightly down. Nobody's making a sale, but they need homes. I mean, how is it out there in the Ventura for you with everything that's gone on literally since last Wednesday? It's that flowing.
Well, even the problem, I think, is that we are not hearing much news about Corona. Corona is kind of back to the headlines. Spikes in Asia, or Texas is up 19% since Memorial Day, and that's really what you see. You're not seeing the in-depth coverage that you were, where they were counting the number of deaths and the number of new cases everywhere anymore, and the focus has shifted to the civil unrest. Even Thousand Oaks, California, which is a predominantly white community, by far predominantly white, had hundreds of protesters for days in a row out getting, the message out about the Black Lives Matter, which is equivalent of, social justice and the lack of police dominance, the oppressive dominance of police. Whether or not you agree with those theories or not, that's what they're out doing. And how is it impacting real estate? Not really at all. I don't think that it's not having any impact on what we're doing up here, other than it's part of the conversation now. And I think that's really the best that people can hope for. And it's going to get kicked around, and it's probably the beginning of some permanent change. Certainly temporary change. We'll see. Though there are still idiots out there in the world, and some of those idiots carry a badge, and they undo thousands of good deeds with one really stupid, flagrant act of oppression.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's the really interesting part of all of this, and I guess the point. One person can dramatically affect the outcome of a news cycle. One person, one event can dramatically affect the economy. One person, one event can actually change the outcome for us professionally as real estate professionals. And that's the most shocking part. It is sad that we're ignoring what's happening with coronavirus. It's mind-boggling that we're ignoring what's happening with the coronavirus. I literally sat this morning watching a bunch of news states showing spikes. California, where we are, LA County, you're still screwed. You're on level 1 or 2. Can't help you. But Ventura, San Diego is literally moments away from going to what they call level 4, where basically, as long as we're not gathering in large masses, which we did all weekend on my beach, for God's sakes, they did. It's almost ridiculous that I had a full beach. Then we had a full protest for 2 days, which I'm completely for. I think I live and die by freedom of speech. I have been podcasting and broadcasting since 2006, maybe 5. And the greatest freedom that I have as an American is being able to record and say whatever I want. I do it for either boxing, or I do it here for real estate, or I do it for marketing, or my most insane show talking about Jeffrey Epstein, which thank God I'm not a part of. But that's the reality for all of us. That's content that's out there. When I get a random request from someone, this happened on Tuesday or Wednesday. Somebody's still asking, are you guys working with default properties? Of course. Why wouldn't I? And whether or not I guess my point is, David, and this is becoming a weird social justice moment. When we say default, people automatically just think short sale. How do we get them around the idea that, and I mean this to all agents out there, default means mispayment, nothing more, nothing less. Where did that message go sideways?
Well, I think that when you look at the 2008 crash that started in 2006 and lasted until not that long ago, I think we started to feel like we had recovered by 2012-13. And the market has obviously continued to improve, and even the setbacks that we've had as a result of Corona, it has not really impacted home values. And there are a lot of people who out there, as a result of foreclosure there for a long time, did equal short sale. And as that evolved, what we really learned is that short sale and foreclosure went hand in hand about 50% of the time, and now it's even less than that, as about 1% of the transactions in a market are actually short sale transactions. So I think it's just a label and affiliation with foreclosure that came from 2008. I mean, most people didn't know what a short sale was in 2008, and even today, people are like you said, they associate short sale with foreclosure, even though
Yeah,
that's
they
not the case.
technically do. No,
What they should
I
associate
completely
it
agree.
with, is high probability of listing. The same way that they associate a for sale by owner with a high probability of listing, or an expired, or a probate, or a divorce. Those are activities, life cycle events in some cases that generally stimulate listing activity, and that's why they're also prospect funnels. So just like probate and for sale by owner are prospect funnels for some agents and investors, so is distressed property, because we know that there's a very high percentage of people that are going to list their house, and some of them will be distressed, all of them will be distressed. Some will be short sales, just like some probates are short sales, just like some divorces are short sale. It's not so foreclosure does not equal short sale, as you were saying. Foreclosure means the homeowner has failed to make their payments.
So here's my bizarre psychological question that I wrestle with on a daily basis. We look for activators in marketing, right? Psychologically speaking, do I push you? Do I scare you? Do I pull you? Is there an apprehension based on what you're seeing in the market? And I open this up to everybody who's on the call live. We'll do live questions today in just a minute. Is there an activator that makes people apprehensive based on the way COVID, then the civil change has affected the market, that it feels predatory to a real estate agent, to a loan officer, to an escrow officer, to people in real estate? Because what we're really talking about is working with people who are, and literally don't know, you're in a dire situation. You are. If you took the early forbearance, and this is true in my personal family, someone David and I care closely about, my daughter Mackenzie, my ex-wife, her step-husband, they took the early forbearance agreement of 90 days with U.S. Bank. I told her literally 5 days ago, because she works for the county, they're talking about long-term layoffs. She's a transcriptionist, so they're talking about either layoffs or piping it into her directly over a headphone, something with social distancing. But they were offering a tremendous package for her to walk away from the job. I said, well, the first thing you need to do is to call U.S. Bank and get a year. She goes, well, I've already taken 90 days. I said, well, you got to get to the end of the 90 days, and then you've got to re-request. And sadly, everything now is dictated by the political figures that we put into office. And I've really been kind of weirdly struggling with this, because I can say this as a marketer. I market businesses. Doesn't matter what it is. And the reality of my job, I have lost almost all of my business based on the concept that there are no businesses to promote at the moment. So I want to talk about this. Is it predatory to be an advocate, to help people who've missed payments, to work in short sales, to work with defaulted properties, to get them to a refinance, to get them into a loan mod, to get them to a forbearance agreement? Is it, I really don't think agents get this, because we just don't disrespect to all the other coaches. It's not about sell, 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 buy, buy, buy. If you don't, I don't have time. And you and I have struggled with this. We've had speakers at our events where you and I both look at each other and we don't like the way they do their business. So now here we are in a very precarious state, dealing with people that are highly emotional. And I know this psychologically. Thank God I went to college. One of the most primal things is protecting your home and your family. But in reality, there are people that are really, really going to lose their home and lose equity. They're going to lose this basic essential in their life, because everything has changed about the United States economy at this moment. And I don't think it's going to go back to normal. I really don't. It's going to take a very long time before everything is normal, where there are jobs created, where there are people going back online, where there is a constant flow of money to individuals who, let's just take your area, David, millions and millions of dollars spent on those homes. I want to talk about this. Let's start with the basics. How do we get people past the sell, 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 I don't have time for you, that weird little twist of it feels predatory thing?
Well, first of all, I think that it's a common mistake that people put their focus first on the money and not on the service. Listen, selling, if we're talking about salespeople now, selling is at its simplest form is basically finding people to sell and selling the people you find. And so what we're talking about is finding people to sell. And so that might be somebody who's going through a divorce. It could be somebody who just lost a family member. It could be somebody who's in foreclosure. And so the question is, how do so do you want to have a conversation with them? So so let's zero in on the distressed property. So on the distressed property person, you want to, if you have an opportunity to get face to face with them, then you would want to get face to face with them and have a conversation. Now, when you have a conversation, whether or not it's a predatory or not really depends on how that conversation goes in my mind. Now, if your only focus is to convince them that they need to sell their house, that their life will be better if they sell their house, if they that the only solution for them is to sell their house, then that is going to be considered predatory in my book. However, if your objective is to make sure that they understand what their alternatives are, that you help them find a path to keep the house, and now now we're having a conversation about, what do you want? What do you have a foreclosure coming up, but what do you want? Do you want to keep the house? Do you want to sell the house? I'll help you either way, but what do you want to do? And so it's taking the time to find out what people want and then spending the rest of the time helping them get it. And sometimes they don't even understand what their options are. Most of the time they don't understand their options are. So we patiently go through the 9 alternatives to foreclosure and present those options to them, and through a process of elimination, figure out what plan A is and plan B is, and sometimes what plan C is, in order to help them execute. And we do that without any emphasis on how much money we're going to make. We do it based on wanting to participate in outreach to a community who is underserved, and who is at high risk of being taken advantage of by a predator.
Well, let's start right there, and let's make this something useful for everybody. Right, let's talk about the alternatives to foreclosure. If you would like to go see them, again, go to homeloanadvocates.org, O-R-G this time, which is part of the Home Loan Advocate Program. And if you want questions about that, feel free, go fill out a forum at honish.com, or call David at 805-413-8000. Simple as that. Let's start right there. Do nothing. All right. Do nothing. What happens if I do nothing, David?
Well, if a homeowner, if you do nothing, then what is going to happen is the bank is going to foreclose on you, and that that means that you're going to, if you don't move out voluntarily, that means that eventually they will also, not only will they foreclose, but then they'll open a unlawful detainer action against you and get the permission to have you removed from the home. And then if you don't leave on your own accord after being ordered to by a judge, then the sheriff will show up and displace you from that house.
As the former head loss mitigator for IndyMac Bank's HELOC division with over 3 decades of service of evicting people, let me add a twist to that for you. If you have a HELOC, David, that becomes an unsecured line of credit. Am I selling that off as a bank to a lovely collection company?
Very often at a discount, so you get something or nothing. And now the bank wants you to foreclose in that scenario, and they are, especially if you have equity, and most houses with HELOCs have equity. What's going to happen is that they're going to absolutely foreclose on you, and there's going to be almost nothing that you can do from them. So they're going to own you, and it's going to be ugly, and it's going to go faster than if a big national bank with lots of public assets were the one trying to move you out.
Probably with a 442 number. Just pointing it out to the rest of you. Be ready for a robo-dialer. Moving on to the next option, payoff and refinance. Very popular, which is making the mortgage industry extremely happy right now, right? People are getting a month or 2 months or 3 months worked into their loan. Yeah. Tell me about payoff and refinancing.
Well, payoffs, listen, if you're, first of all, if you're late on your mortgage, refinancing isn't an option. You have to qualify. So if the bank is reporting you as delinquent, you're not going to be able to refi. So that's not an option. The other alternative is that perhaps you've got some money socked away that will allow you to write a check in order to pay off the mortgage, or perhaps a family member or friend might be willing to do that for you in order to cure the default. It's generally not an option that people facing foreclosure have.
Which takes us to my favorite, the reinstatement. Perhaps you could explain it a little more in detail from your side.
Yeah, so
of the
reinstatement is basically where you call the bank and you get your loan reinstated. And the way that generally happens is that you reinstate your loan by making the past due payments. So you call the bank, you find out what the arrearage is, and you write a check. So it's typically, depends on what your mortgage payment is, but in California, the average arrearage is in the $14,000 range. So one of the questions we ask, I said, let me ask you a question. If the bank were to allow you to resume making your mortgage payment tomorrow at the same payment that you're making right now, would you be able to make those payments? And it's either yes or no. If the answer is yes, then the next question would be, what is the amount of arrearage that you would need to make to be able to do that? And then are you able to write a check for that amount? Now, no seller should make up an arrearage if they are unable to resume making their normal mortgage payment. That's throwing good money after bad, and they're going to end up losing their house. So if they've got the money to make up the past due mortgage payments, but they're unable to continue to make them for whatever the reason is, they should not do that. If they're going to end up losing the house eventually, and much better to lose the house with money in the bank versus lose the house with no money in the bank.
The world famous and now infamous 2010 to 2013 latest and greatest hot hit in real estate, the loan modification.
Loan modification is one of the options that are available to most homeowners. But what most people don't really understand is that a loan mod is not based on whether or not you need help. yes, you have to demonstrate that you need help, but you also have to demonstrate that if they were to give you a loan modification, that you would be able to make those payments. Even using that as a criteria, I can't make I had a change in my income or my family situation that prevented me from making my mortgage payment. I have solved that now. I would like to resume making my mortgage payment. And but if you were to give me a loan modification, we could be right with each other and we'll be here forever and always and be good citizens going forward. Now, you're basically trying to convince the bank that that's something that you can do, um, but you cannot do that unless you have a job. You have to be able. You still need the same proof of income. Your ratios need to be the same. They're basically re-underwriting you for a loan uh, that you then have to resume making payments. 15% of people get approved for a loan mod, and only 4% end up in a temporary loan mod as a way to do it. So why the banks and the government want you to believe that anybody can get a loan mod, you cannot get. Not everybody gets a loan mod. Only 4% end up with a permanent loan modification. But they should try.
Which takes us, you should, which takes us to the curveball in the whole pile, the lovely forbearance agreement, which is now, if I was going to call this phase two of all real estate issues within the last decade, we have now come upon the new one, the forbearance agreement, which
Yeah,
isn't
most
new.
people. Yeah, no, most people didn't even know what forbearance was and may not really understand it now, other than they think that it's a payment vacation, and that's not what it is. I mean, maybe the net effect is that you get to skip a few payments. So basically, the concept of a forbearance is that, let's say, in the case of your ex-wife's 90-day forbearance that she had gotten, basically what that means is that you get a payment holiday for those 3 months. What it doesn't clarify is what happens to those payments. When do you have to make those payments? So basically, a forbearance is a payment deferral. So they're going to defer those payments to later. In some cases, that means they're just adding those missed payments onto the back of the loan and extending the loan, which is a kind of a loan modification. In other examples, they are saying it's due and you get a 3-month payment deferral, but in the fourth month, you still owe us that month plus the 3 months that you didn't pay, and now all of a sudden you owe 4 months, and that basically is what it means. So it should mean payments go to the back of the loan, but sometimes what it means is that 3 months we want all of our money, including the 3 missed payments.
And I want to make this abundantly clear for those listening to this, especially in the coaching room. These are in no particular order. They have no greater importance one over the other. And the reason I say that right now, and I don't think I've ever made this clear, forbearance has an effect on credit. 2 weeks ago, it had one effect. A week ago, it had a different effect. There are rumors it has a new effect. Um, what I don't think people get is this is all subjective. This is all based on a human being at your widget lender who is going to be delivered a package of information, right? So theoretically, if you took a forbearance, then asked for a loan mod, or you asked for a release, or you asked for a partial claim, or you, because we're going to talk about that in a second, or a refinance, or more importantly, um, the refinance is the big deal. And I don't think people get this. Forbearance has an impact on what happens to you and how your file's reviewed. And I can tell you that safely. It's like getting a lien on your property if you're a construction loan lender. It affects whether or not someone like me at a bank is going to review your file and want to move forward. So I really want to couple all this even with a partial claim saying this is all subjective.
No, this is,
Yes.
like I said a week or two ago, this is the month of reckoning. People were getting forbearance for April, May, and June, or March, April, and May, and then June is coming due. So over the next 30 to 60 days, we are really going to see whether or not we have an issue or not. Now, keep in mind that 60%, those are 60% of people, those are the loans that are backed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They can get up to a year. But everybody else is basically, a dice roll. You don't really know what your lender is going to do. It really depends on who owns that loan. So, and how they want to do it. And it might say Wells Fargo or Bank of America on your statement, but that doesn't mean Wells Fargo or Bank of America own that loan. They might just be servicing that loan. So we're going to have to wait and see, but you're going to see a big surge in foreclosures, and people are going to need help. They're going to want help. And our superpower is being able to help those people, and we should be offering our services to them, and we'll build a relationship with. Now, even though we don't do it for profit, we do it as part of our public outreach. We also know, based on statistics, that a very high percentage of people who try to save their house through a loan mod or a forbearance or other methods actually end up having to sell their house. And it just makes sense, if you're a real estate professional that's also providing these services, that they're going to inquire as to whether or not you can help them do that. So it's not totally philanthropic, but it's not predatory either. And our mission is really to help them understand their options and how to get into a place where they could keep their house if that's what they want. Now, if that's not what they want, then we can cut right to selling their house or buying their house if I'm an investor.
The least likely of all the options, a partial claim.
I haven't seen a partial claim in 10 years, really. And a partial claim is basically where the bank actually creates a second mortgage. Now, they might actually be doing some of these with these forbearances where they take the past due amounts and they put it into a second loan and they treat it as a balloon, and they just put it at the end of the term. So we might actually see this coming up now, but as opposed to just extending the term by 3 months, it may just be a partial claim, and they put it into a separate note and they treat it as a second, and it's due at the end of the original term of the loan.
Deed in lieu of foreclosure.
Well, this is an option that we're seeing banks more and more that are offering to people. But basically, deed in lieu is kind of like a voluntary repossession. So if you had a car that you couldn't afford anymore, maybe didn't want, you could just stop making your payments, and eventually the tow truck will show up and take the car out of your driveway. Or you can just call the finance company and say, hey, I got this car. I don't want to keep it. I don't want you to come to my house and take it. I'd like to just return it to you. And you show up at a dealership or another point, and you flip them the keys and you leave the car and you go from there. So deed in lieu is kind of like you negotiate with the bank just to give it back to them. And oftentimes banks don't want to do that. Most of the time they don't want to do that until you've at least tried to liquidate it. They don't want to assume your problem. So they want you to try to sell it on your own, either regular or through a short sale. And then if you fail that, then they might be willing to just take it versus foreclose on you.
Which takes us to bankruptcy. There are 3 terms of bankruptcy: 7, 13, and 11. Take us through it, David.
Yeah, bankruptcy, I think that people have a big misunderstanding that, well, I'm fine, I filed bankruptcy. And all bankruptcy does is give you more time. So bankruptcy, when you invoke the power of bankruptcy, basically you are putting all your creditors, including your mortgage company, on notice that they have to cease and desist from all credit activity while you go through that process. Now, there are different bankruptcies. Chapter 7 is for people who earn less than $50,000 per year, and it's a total, erasure of all debt. So you basically get a clean slate. A Chapter 13 is a reorganization, and it's a partial forgiveness of debt, and the judge, aka trustee, puts together a payment plan for you to be able to make. And as long as you make that payment, you'll stay in this state of limbo, bankruptcy limbo, until you finish it, and then you will emerge out of bankruptcy with your debt reorganized or paid off. 11 is really for businesses, so we won't talk about that. But bankruptcy cannot force a loan modification. It cannot save your house, but it will stop the foreclosure, because that's a collection activity. It will buy you more time. Generally 2 or 3 months will buy you. But the banks have a right to go out and get a lift of stay, if you will. In other words, if they apply, the judge will almost always, especially if there's no equity, the judge will almost always allow the bank to pursue foreclosure and force the liquidation of that house. And if there's no equity, then it doesn't really contribute to the bankruptcy, so the judge doesn't really care. And if there is equity, that money will go into the estate and be used to pay off all of your creditors. So while it buys you a reprieve, it doesn't solve your problem. You still have to deal with the foreclosure separately.
Which takes us to the option that all of us on the call, everybody in the mortgage industry, because apparently we are essential services, sell your property.
Yeah, and selling doesn't necessarily mean short selling. Listen, at the end of the day, I go through this list with people, and we go through a process of elimination. And basically, I put X's through, and then I circle the options that might work for them. So loan mod is one that gets circled. Bankruptcy is one that gets circled. Deed in lieu oftentimes gets circled, and obviously selling the house gets circled. Now, selling the house is not usually the person's first choice, but it helps them to understand that is an option. And selling your house oftentimes is much better than being foreclosed. I mean, after all, from a psychological perspective, is it better to sell your house or to get evicted from your house? Is it easier to tell your parents we sold our house or we lost our house? What's easier to explain to your kids? We've decided to sell our house and to move into something more affordable or something closer to the grandparents, or we needed to leave in the middle of the night to avoid the sheriff locking us out. So there's an emotional connotation and stigma that goes with losing the house. And if you sell the house, you have some control over what the transition strategy is going to be, and you have a lot more control about how much cash you're going to end up with when you make that transition. Most people want to go through the process of trying to get a loan mod, and if they're not successful getting a loan mod, sometimes after one try, sometimes multiple tries, then they might file bankruptcy if they need more time, and then they end up selling their house. So 4% of the time people end up with a loan mod and can keep their house, at least temporarily, but the rest of the time people end up having to sell, and very often they're going to end up listing with somebody who tried to help them keep their house.
I completely agree. And let me give the banking perspective of, without joke, 3 decades of doing everything David's talking about for various levels of different banks doing different things. The single most evasive thing that I've ever been a part of is the eviction process of physically going in, throwing a family out, physically boarding up a property, physically rekeying a property, and watching that drama take place. And if you're wondering if it has deep lasting psychological scars, I still can't talk about some of the things I've seen or had to do to evict people. And that's from the 80s and 90s, where it was so shocking. There has been no change in that process. And I'm in California, that is literally the most liberal place to evict people, and to do an unlawful detainer. By far, this is the most liberal place. The reason I bring that up is, and it still bugs me to this day, David, why do people let the money in the walls go? What is that fight? What voodoo do lawyers know? What what is that? I have been fighting this for as long as I've been teaching short sales and alternatives to foreclosure, or trying to be an advocate, or trying to help homeowners, or doing homeowner group. Like, I've done so much stuff since 2007, and the one that blows my mind isn't the short sale. That just seems logical. The one that boggles my brain is, you physically have equity and you think that you're going to get a check in the mail because you left the day before, the sheriff showed up. That's not how this works.
Yeah, no, it's not how it works. And so, I think people are misinformed, and misguided in their decision making process. Um, Listen, the number one thing that people should be aware of are lawyers taking money every month with the promise of saving their house. Oftentimes, it's as much as the mortgage payment would be, and had they just used that and with the bank, they might have been able to save their house. So it's throwing good money after bad money. Listen, suing the bank doesn't work. Um, it might buy you more time in the house while they, screw around with, you know, annoying lawsuits and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it really minimizes the likelihood that you're going to be able to keep your house if that's what you want. I go back to trying to find out what people want. What do you want? I want to keep my house. Are you trying to keep it forever so that you pay it off and own it? Or do you just need more time before you make a transition? Most people most people, I was surprised to learn, don't plan to keep that house forever. They just want to get to the end of the school year, or to Christmas, or the New Year, or to, their dad's birthday, or, my kids go to college, or whatever. There's some event that's coming up that they're saying, when that happens, I'll be ready to go. And sometimes we can help them do that depending on how far out it is in the horizon. And sometimes we can't, and we have to explain to them why that's not possible. But we can put a plan in there to not only to help them transition, but strategy one is to help them stay in the house for 6 months or a year, before they end up having to move. And then step two oftentimes is getting them some cash to help them with the transition. Sometimes people say, you know what, I just like to get the cash out of my walls of my house and just get off this treadmill and go out and enjoy and get into a place that I can afford. And then we have a different approach to how we do it. So not all situations are the same, but it starts with a sincere conversation with the homeowner. What do you want? When do you want it? Let me show you how we might be able to get there. Let me show you why that might happen, but it's a stretch. Let me show you why that probably can't happen, but I can show you a plan B that might also work for you. These are the conversations that we have with people in our sincere desire to help them understand their options and to make well-informed decisions based on review of all the information that is available. It's our superpower. We owe it to our communities to share it.
With that said, how can somebody who wants to deal with the complexities of all of this find some, I don't know, super agent, amazing facility that actually specializes in this, that was voted on by a group of his peers as the top alternatives to foreclosure specialists?
Well, you make me blush every time you say that, but if you want to talk to me, it's 805-413-8000. Email is david@homeloanadvocates.com. You can also go to homeloanadvocates.com to learn more about what we do as a company, or our consumer-facing site is homeloanadvocates.com. O-R-G. And I'm happy to have a conversation with you. If you're a real estate agent and you're looking to do more things in the advocate world, or just be busier, or the safety and security of a salary plus commission, I'd also welcome a conversation with you on that.
And I want to make this abundantly clear, because it's just my guess. Lawyers are going to figure this out, and this is going to be the new lawyer angle to bleed homeowners, because they'll either hit the 90-day gap or they'll hit the 1-year gap, and we're going to find out exactly come probably the end of the month or July exactly what the next lawyer play. And if you'd like the historic perspective, I was around for the 1-page contract that went to 3 pages, which is now, I don't know, David, what are you guys up to? 450 pages of contract with stuff that you actually need a lawyer to explain during the process of the in a sale. Like, it's become ridiculous. I literally started in the business when it was a simple 1-page contract, or as my dad taught me, you could write an offer on a piece of toilet paper. Right. That's how it should be. It honestly should be a handshake. Here's what I want to pay. Here's what you want to sell. Then the lawyers got involved. I say this for everybody who's looking for an angle in real estate, because everybody has been saying this and it's come up in the questions. The market is going to shift. 100,000 businesses have closed in market number 1. I am in San Diego. 2 of the largest amusement centers, called Boomers, has closed, filed bankruptcy, selling the property. They're getting out of Dodge. That's hundreds of jobs. I would not be shocked if I woke up tomorrow and heard SeaWorld has closed. There's another 1,000 jobs. I walked around my neighborhood this week in a little tiny seaside community of Oceanside, saw everything boarded up, saw the businesses they're gone. They're not coming back. I've seen the businesses try to reopen on limited staff. This isn't normal. It's going to affect the change. And what I'm concerned most with, and I guess it's my plea, step up, agents. I mean, this isn't that big a deal. I think by far, short sales were a bigger deal than what's happening right now. People actually have equity. They have money coming in on some level. They have options. What happened in 2007 is a complete collapse, and they stopped it this time. We should have collapsed. I'm just telling you this from a banking perspective. We should have done it again, but the entire economy could not handle the weight of decade after decade of complete crumble. And I don't want to get into the dollar thing. I've beat on that for 13 years. We're starting to see the flaw in borrowing money to pay for tomorrow. Just a quick moment on this, David. We've talked a lot about being advocates. We're talking a lot about being a good advisor, about being the trusted friend. And by the way, you should really, be attracted to anyone talking that message. It's the correct message. But by and far, David, we've talked about it, the 90-10 rule. 90% of what you're going to do is for free. 10% is what's going to pay you. Maybe you want to expand upon that just a little tiny bit.
Well, activity equals productivity. One of the things that I learned a long time ago was not to measure my success based on my income per transaction. A lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to do that. It's not enough money. It's not even worth my time." If you're a real estate agent, you might have even uttered those words. And the reality is, I think that's just really a mistake. The way that you really have to look at it, you go out and you do the best you can. You serve as many people as you can. You try to do things in your income wheelhouse, but you're building relationships around real estate. And what my experience is that when you help people, you get rewarded in ways that you can't quantify through that relationship. So sometimes maybe you only make a couple of $1,000s on the transaction. Maybe you make nothing. Maybe you make 20,000. Maybe somebody you made nothing on refers you to their sister who needs to sell $1 million house, and you make $25,000 on it. They're at the end of it's instead of at the end of the transaction, how much did I make on that deal? I look at the end of the month and say, how much did we make? and go from there. So I'm just into providing the highest level of service. I give free advice all day long, every single day. Some of it has an immediate payoff, some of it has a future payoff, but it's all a payoff, and the activity equals productivity today, tomorrow, and down the road. And every day we just got to keep moving and doing our best and establishing ourselves as somebody who cares about our community and offers really great advice, to make sure that people understand what their options are, and that I am somebody that can be trusted, will help them execute when they're ready.
Simple as that. I think because we work in such a, I'm going to say it, neglected niche of real estate, I understand that there are other coaches out there that will say that one transaction leads to two, those two lead to four exponentially. It is the exact same thing as being an advocate to people that need help. Again, if you need help, call David. Yeah, go ahead.
I can give you an example of how this works, because it just happened yesterday. Is that I got a call. Somebody wanted me to just find them a renter. I said, okay. I did them a renter. Then she called me up and said, hey, my mother-in-law, she wants a renter. So I did that. Now that's a few $100s, $1,400 each. No big deal. And rentals are a pain in the neck. If you've done a rental, you know what I mean. Yesterday, so that was over a year ago, a year and a half ago. I got that one. Then I did mother-in-law's house, 6 or 7 months ago. Just yesterday, she called me. It said, okay. And just say, I want to just ask you a few questions about real estate. I just started answering those questions without any angle. I wasn't probing. I wasn't trying to close her. And then she came out of blue and she said, you know what? I think that we're gonna sell two places and buy another one. Is that something you can help me with? And all of a sudden, now I'm having a conversation with her about doing 3 transactions by the end of the summer. That's how it works.
Simple as
That's how it works.
And I'm going to stress this. I understand that everyone on this call, everyone who's listening to this is a rebroadcast. You've heard it out of other coaches in regards to traditional real estate transactions. It is no different helping a person who is doing a forbearance, who's going through a short sale, who's missed a payment. And it's not taking advantage of it, it's being an advocate. And the stigma is just ridiculous at this point, because it's about to happen again, legitimately. There is nothing inside of me that cannot see that there are going to be people displaced who are going to need new dwellings, who are going to need to liquidate their property. And there is no doubt in my mind on the next topic, which is once the lawyers figure out an angle, they're going to get involved and muck up the work. So as real estate professionals in the code of ethics with the big bad NAR, your number one primary function is to be an advocate. It's not how much do I make on the transaction. And I think that's the knock on the business. It's been the knock with mortgage. It's been the knock with escrow. It's been the knock with agents. It's been the knock with investors. You're just trying to make a deal. No, I'm trying to do the best thing by you. Do I get paid? Yes. No different than any other profession. And if you want that help from David, call him 805-413-8000. If you'd like to learn to be a part of this program and get guaranteed face-to-face results immediately, something most of you probably can't even wrap your brain around right now in real estate, go to Honish.com, fill out the form. We'll find something that works for you.